It was supposed to be an ordinary morning at the airport until something unbelievable happened. Passengers froze in their tracks as 14 police dogs suddenly broke formation, surrounding a tiny blonde girl standing alone near Gate 12. No one dared to move. Without warning, the dogs began barking wildly at the little girl. She took an uneasy step back. "Please make them stop," she cried, looking around desperately. The officer in charge shouted commands, but the dogs refused to back down. Their gaze locked onto her as if she were hiding something dangerous. A nearby officer, a tall man with a stern face, stepped forward. "Sweetheart, we need to ask you a few questions," he said firmly. The little girl's face turned pale. "I don't understand. I haven't done anything wrong." Her voice trembled, panic creeping in. Then the dogs barked again, even more ferociously. Within seconds, security swarmed the terminal. No one could understand what was happening. Was she in danger? Was it possible she was carrying something illegal? Or were the dogs protecting her from something none of them could see? What happened next left everyone speechless and turned this little girl into the center of a story the world would never forget. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Morning sunlight poured through the airport's glass walls, flooding the terminal in golden light. The rhythmic hum of rolling suitcases, distant boarding calls, and soft chatter created an atmosphere of routine. Just another busy day. Flight attendants greeted passengers with polite smiles. Families hurried toward check-in counters and travelers lined up for coffee, unaware that within the next hour, this peaceful terminal would witness something the world would talk about for years. Officer Mark Jensen adjusted his badge as he led his elite K9 unit through Gate 12. 14. German Shepherds walked in perfect formation beside their handlers. Disciplined, focused, and silent, the unit was conducting a routine security sweep ahead of a high-profile arrival. Mark prided himself on his team's precision. These weren't ordinary dogs. They were the best trained detection K9S in the country. Each dog had its own specialty: explosives, narcotics, electronics, and crowd threat detection. But together, they formed an unbreakable wall of instinct and loyalty. As Mark walked, Rex, his lead dog, moved slightly ahead, scanning faces and luggage with sharp eyes. Passengers often paused to admire them, snapping photos, some even waving. Mark allowed it. He knew people loved seeing the dogs, symbols of trust and protection in a world full of uncertainty. At the same time, his radio crackled to life. Unit 7 maintained sweep at Gate 12. Keep formation tight. VIP movement scheduled in 30. Mark acknowledged calmly, his tone steady. He'd done this hundreds of times, but something in Rex's posture made him glance down. The shepherd's ears twitched and his gaze lingered near the waiting area. Nothing unusual, just a few travelers, a janitor, and a small family near the window. Mark brushed off the moment and continued his patrol, unaware that his dog had already sensed something different. Rex's instincts were always razor sharp, but today they felt almost restless, as if a storm was quietly gathering beneath the calm surface of the airport's routine hum. Mark gave a short whistle. The dog straightened again, obedient and alert. Passengers watched in quiet admiration as the unit moved past. No one, not even Mark, could have guessed that before this day ended, those same dogs would defy every command and surround a little girl. To save her life, the morning rush carried on as usual. Flight announcements echoing, travelers sipping coffee, and children tugging at their parents' hands. But near Gate 12, something small and silent stood out amid the movement. A little girl, no older than 4, stood alone beside a luggage cart. She wasn't crying or calling for help. She just stared ahead, clutching a worn-out, stuffed bear so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Officer Mark Jensen noticed her almost by accident. His K9 unit had just finished sweeping the boarding area when he caught a glimpse of the child standing perfectly still, her pink jacket glowing softly under the sunlight streaming through the glass walls. There was something haunting about her calmness, too calm for a child who appeared to be lost. Mark exchanged a look with one of his officers. "Anyone see her come in?" he asked quietly. The man shook his head. No parents nearby, no guardian, nothing. Rex, Mark's lead German Shepherd, suddenly slowed his pace, his ears flicking forward. He turned his head toward the girl, his posture shifting from alert to cautious curiosity. One by one, the other dogs mirrored him, their noses lifting slightly, sniffing the air as if something invisible had stirred their senses. Mark frowned. "Easy, Rex," he murmured, tightening his grip on the leash. But Rex wasn't tense. He was focused. His eyes never left the girl. Passengers began to notice too. Some pointed, others whispered. A few even took out their phones, thinking they were witnessing a heartwarming moment. A lost child being found by kind officers. But the air felt heavier. Mark slowly approached the girl, lowering his voice. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you lost?" The girl didn't answer. She hugged her stuffed bear tighter and looked up at him with wide blue eyes, eyes that seemed distant, almost dazed. "Do you know where your mommy or daddy is?" He tried again. Still nothing, just silence, and the faint sound of the bear's button eye clicking as her tiny fingers trembled against it. Behind Mark, the dogs began to shift again, restless now. Rex gave a soft growl low in warning. Mark turned slightly, his brow furrowing. Something wasn't right. He could feel it. And judging by the way 14 trained canines were reacting, he wasn't the only one. In that quiet, sunlit corner of the airport, calm began to crack, and the storm was about to begin. The silence lasted only a moment. Then everything changed. Rex's low growl deepened into a sharp bark that echoed across the glass terminal. Within seconds, all 14 police dogs turned in unison, eyes locked on the little girl. The coordinated movement sent ripples of panic through the bystanders. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips. Every pair of eyes in the terminal fixed on the sight of 14 trained German shepherds forming a slow, deliberate circle around a tiny child. "Hold positions," Mark shouted, his voice cutting through the confusion. But the command went unanswered. The dogs didn't attack, and they surrounded. Their bodies were tense, but not aggressive. Their heads lowered, tails straight, forming a protective wall around the girl. It was as if an unseen danger lurked nearby, and only they could sense it. Passengers gasped, backing away. Some grabbed their children. Others raised their phones, recording the surreal moment. Security officers rushed forward, hands instinctively going to their holsters, but Mark raised his palm to stop them. He knew these dogs. He trusted them with his life. If they were doing this, there had to be a reason. "Easy, team, easy," he muttered, moving cautiously toward Rex. The lead shepherd's gaze flicked between the girl and something unseen, his nostrils flaring as if tracing a scent, his every muscle vibrated with restrained energy. The other dogs mirrored his movements perfectly, their growls harmonizing like a warning chorus. The little girl didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She stood silently inside the circle, clutching her bear, looking from one dog to another. Sunlight streamed across the floor, reflecting off their coats. A striking image of power and innocence colliding. "What's going on?" one of the officers whispered. "I don't know," Mark replied, eyes scanning the area. "But don't break formation. Let them work," the crowd whispered frantically. Someone muttered, "Is she dangerous?" Another said, "Are they protecting her?" Then Rex barked again, short, urgent, commanding. The dogs adjusted their positions slightly, tightening the circle. It was now clear they weren't restraining her. They were shielding her. Mark's pulse quickened. He could read Rex like a book, and this wasn't aggression. It was fear mixed with duty. Rex wasn't reacting to the girl. He was reacting for her. Something near her or on her had triggered their instincts. Mark crouched slightly, his hand hovering near his holster, eyes sweeping the surroundings. Nothing seemed out of place, and just frightened passengers, security officers, and the echo of barking that refused to stop. Then, without warning, Rex's ears shot up. His head turned sharply toward the little girl's stuffed bear, and a deep rumble grew in his chest. Mark's heart skipped. Whatever had drawn the dog's attention, it was inside that toy, and in that instant, the calm warning officially became chaos. The tension snapped like a wire. The moment Rex lunged toward the little girl's stuffed bear, chaos exploded around them. Passengers screamed, scattering in every direction. Suitcases toppled, coffee splashed across the floor, and airport security scrambled to contain the growing panic. The sound of barking filled the air, fierce and commanding. A sharp rhythmic chorus that echoed off the glass walls. "Everyone stay back," Mark yelled, holding up both hands as his voice fought against the noise. But no one was listening. Fear had already taken hold. Some thought the dogs were attacking. Others believed there was a bomb. A wave of shouting rolled through the terminal as alarms began to blare overhead. In the middle of the chaos, the little girl remained frozen. Her blue eyes darted around, confused and terrified, but she didn't move. Rex stood between her and the crowd, his body a living shield. The other 13 dogs mirrored him perfectly, forming a tight ring of protection. Their heads turned outward now, away from the girl, as if they were expecting an attack from somewhere else. Mark's instinct screamed at him that this wasn't random. His dogs had never lost control before. Every motion, every growl, every twitch of their ears had purpose. Rex, he called out firmly, locking eyes with his partner. What is it? What do you smell? Rex didn't blink. He pressed closer to the girl, nose twitching near the stuffed bear again, and let out a deep warning bark that reverberated across the polished floor. Get bomb squad on standby, Mark ordered into his radio, his voice tight. Seal off gate 12 immediately. Security teams rushed to block off the area. Passengers were herded toward emergency exits, their frightened chatter rising like a storm. The once calm terminal had transformed into a scene of confusion and fear. Amid the flashing lights and shouted orders, Mark crouched near the girl, speaking softly despite his pounding heart. Hey, sweetheart.
It's okay. You're safe. All right. You're doing great. The child blinked, her small voice trembling. They're not mad. They're scared. Her words hit Mark harder than he expected. He turned toward Rex, who stood rigid, tail straight, gaze locked on the stuffed bear. The officer's gut twisted. Whatever his canine partner was sensing, it wasn't just danger. It was imminent. And somewhere inside that silent toy, hidden under soft fur and thread, was the reason the entire airport was about to stop breathing. The air inside Gate 12 felt charged, thick with confusion and fear. Red emergency lights flashed above as airport staff tried to calm the passengers. But amid the chaos, Rex wasn't moving. His nose hovered inches from the little girl's stuffed bear, nostrils flaring sharply as if tracking something unseen. Mark knelt beside him, feeling the tension in the dog's muscles like coiled steel. Rex, he whispered. What do you smell, boy? The shepherd's ears flicked. He took a step forward, sniffing the bear, then the girl's jacket, then the air around her. The other dogs followed, their synchronized movements creating a wave of uneasy growls. It wasn't aggression. It was alert. They were detecting something that didn't belong. One of the handlers, Officer Diaz, crouched near the nearest dog. Mark, it's not explosive residue. The sensors would have picked it up. Could it be chemical? Mark shook his head. No, this is different. Look at them. They're not sure whether to protect or attack. The girl clutched her bear tighter, her lips quivering. He's scared, she said softly. Mark blinked. Who's scared, sweetheart? She pointed to Rex, the dog. The simplicity of her words sent chills down his spine. Rex wasn't scared. He was warning. His instincts screamed danger, but not in the way anyone expected. Suddenly, one of the dogs barked sharply and turned toward the row of seats near the glass wall. The others followed, their noses twitching in the same direction. Mark's eyes darted that way. An abandoned stroller, a half-finished cup of coffee, a child's shoe. Nothing dangerous, or was it? He gave the command. Search. The dogs split instantly, two breaking toward the stroller, others circling the seats. Within seconds, Rex growled again, low and guttural, signaling something specific. The smell wasn't coming from the seats. It was clinging to the girl's clothing. Mark felt his pulse spike. It's on her, he muttered. Something's on her. Diaz's expression hardened. Contaminant powder. Device. Rosu. Maybe. Mark replied, scanning the crowd. But why would she have it? He looked back at the child, frightened, trembling, lost, and felt his stomach twist. The dog's instincts were never wrong. Whatever scent they'd locked onto, it was close. Dangerously close. And as Rex's growl deepened again, Mark realized something terrifying. The danger wasn't approaching. It was already with them. The atmosphere inside Gate 12 was suffocating. The crowd had been cleared from the area, leaving behind only officers, handlers, and the echo of barking dogs. Red emergency lights washed the polished floor in pulses of color as Mark crouched beside the little girl. Rex stood alert at his side, his gaze fixed firmly on the stuffed bear that the child clutched with trembling fingers. Sweetheart, Mark said softly, I need you to hand me your toy. Okay, you're not in trouble. The girl hesitated, hugging the bear closer as if afraid to let go. Her lips trembled. It's my friend, she whispered. Daddy gave it to me. Those words hit like a punch to the gut. Mark's voice softened even more. I promise I'll give it right back. But Rex here thinks something's wrong with it. and I need to make sure you're safe. After a long pause, the child slowly extended the toy. Mark took it carefully, his gloves brushing against its matted fur. The bear felt heavier than it should and cold. How the kind of cold from the air conditioning, but metallic, hidden. Diaz, get the portable scanner. Mark ordered quietly. The other officer moved fast, pulling the compact handheld device from the kit. He ran it over the bear's body. The screen lit up immediately, and a sharp, high frequency beep sliced through the air. Everyone froze. What is it? Mark asked, his throat tightening. Diaz looked at the reading, disbelief spreading across his face. Metal signature inside the torso. Rex growled low, stepping back, fur bristling. The other dogs responded in chorus, barking sharply, surrounding the girl once more. Mark turned toward the child. Do you know what's inside, honey? The girl shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. It's just a bear. The scanner beeped again and louder this time. Diaz's hands trembled. Sir, this isn't a toy modification. There's wiring in here. The words hit like thunder. Mark's heart pounded. Everyone back off carefully. Officers ushered the handlers back as Mark placed the bear gently on the floor. The bomb squad was already on its way, but every second felt like an eternity. Rex stood guard, body stiff, eyes locked on the toy like it might move. Diaz's radio crackled, EOD en route. ETA 4 minutes. Mark nodded tightly, but couldn't take his eyes off the little girl. Her small voice broke through the heavy silence. I told him not to put it in there. Mark froze. Told who? She sniffled. The man at the airport. He said Daddy wanted it fixed. A chill shot through Mark's chest. Whoever had tampered with that bear wasn't just hiding something. They were using this child as the perfect cover. And the real question now wasn't what was inside the toy. It was who had given it to her and why. Just as the bomb squad began to cordon off the terminal, a scream pierced through the chaos. Lily. The sound was raw, desperate, slicing through the noise of alarms and barking. Heads turned as a woman sprinted past security, her hair disheveled, tears streaking her face. That's my daughter. Please let me through. Officers blocked her path instantly. Ma'am, stop. This is a restricted zone. One of them barked, but she fought to push past them, panic, giving her strength. She's only 4. Someone took her from the restroom 10 minutes ago. Her voice broke, trembling with terror. Mark turned sharply, stunned. Her daughter. He motioned for the officers to hold position as he stepped forward. Ma'am, what's your name? Emily Parker, she cried. Please, I just want my baby. Rex moved closer to Mark. Eyes locked on the woman. His tail stiffened, body tense. For a brief moment, the shepherd growled, a deep, instinctive sound that made the woman freeze. But then just as quickly, Rex stopped. His posture softened, and he took a single step toward her. Mark's chest loosened with relief. Rex had made his judgment. The woman wasn't a threat. She was telling the truth. Mark nodded to security. Let her through. Emily fell to her knees beside the girl, wrapping her arms around her trembling child. Lily, sweetheart, oh my God. Are you okay? The little girl burst into tears for the first time, clutching her mother's shirt as if afraid she'd vanish again. The sight silenced the room for a moment. Even the dogs seemed to relax slightly, their tails lowering, but their eyes still watchful. Mark knelt beside them. Ma'am, we found something inside your daughter's toy. Do you know anything about this bear? Emily's face drained of color. That's her favorite. Her father gave it to her before. She stopped mid-sentence, her lips trembling. Before what? Mark pressed gently. Her voice cracked before he disappeared. He was an engineer working on a classified military project. After he went missing, strange men started following us. I thought I was imagining it. Mark's blood ran cold. This was no random security scare. It was connected to something far bigger. As Rex pressed closer to the mother and daughter, his ears perked again. Alert. Mark noticed it instantly. What is it now, boy? Rex's gaze turned sharply toward the window. The danger wasn't over. It was only moving closer. The terminal had fallen into uneasy silence. Outside, flashing red and blue lights painted the glass walls as bomb technicians suited up near the jetway. Inside, Mark crouched near the small evidence table where the stuffed bear now lay under bright inspection lights. Its seams had been carefully cut open, revealing a tangle of tiny wires and a metallic core no bigger than a coin. It's not an explosive, the lead technician said, frowning as he examined the device. But it's transmitting, or at least it was. Mark straightened his jaw, tightening. Transmitting what? Coordinates. Most likely location data. It's a tracker, military grade. Someone's been following this little girl. Emily's face went pale. She held Lily close, her voice trembling. They found us again, didn't they? Mark turned toward her, confused. Who's they, ma'am? Tears welled in her eyes. My husband, Daniel Parker, worked for a defense contractor. He was developing a new kind of encrypted communication chip for the military. 3 months ago, he uncovered something, a breach in the system. He tried to report it, but before he could, he disappeared. They said it was an accident. I didn't believe them. Mark exchanged a glance with Diaz. The word breach set off alarm bells. So you think someone's targeting your family? Emily nodded weakly. A week after his death, I started noticing cars following us. Strange calls in the middle of the night. When I took Lily to visit my sister, a man at the airport offered to fix her bear. Said the stitches were coming loose. I thought he was being kind. Her voice broke into a sob. I didn't know he was putting something inside it. Mark clenched his fists. They used the child as a decoy, as bait to trace you. The realization hit everyone like a shockwave. The dogs had sensed the transmitter long before any human device could. Their instincts had saved not only the girl, but everyone in the terminal. The technician interrupted the silence. We traced the signal. It was broadcasting to a nearby receiver before we disabled it. Whoever was on the other end knew exactly where she was. Rex barked suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. He was facing the glass again, body stiff, hackles raised. His deep growl reverberated through the hall. Mark followed his line of sight. A black van idling just outside the perimeter fence. The windows were tinted, the engine still running. Diaz's hand went to his radio. We've got movement near the runway. Mark's pulse spiked. Get eyes on that vehicle now. Rex barked again, louder this time, and the other dogs joined in, their chorus echoing like a warning siren. Mark looked at Emily, then at the child, trembling in her arms. Whatever this is, he said grimly, it's not over yet. The bomb squad had barely cleared the terminal when Rex froze again. His body stiffened, ears pricking sharply toward the massive glass wall overlooking the runway. The change was instantaneous from alert to alarm. His growl rolled low and deep, vibrating through the silent terminal like distant thunder. Mark noticed immediately. Rex, he called, his voice wary. The shepherd didn't respond. Instead, he took 2 deliberate steps forward, nose twitching, gaze locked on something outside. One by one, the other dogs mirrored him, forming a unified wall of tension. 14 sets of ears pointed the same way toward the tarmac and the black van idling beyond the fence. Diaz followed Mark's line of sight. You've got to be kidding me. That thing's still out there. Mark grabbed his radio. Control, this is Jensen. We've got an unmarked van at the perimeter. No plate visibility. Possible connection to earlier threat. Requesting tactical units immediately. Static crackled for a moment before command replied, copy that. Units dispatched. Rex barked sharply, his claws scraping the tile as he strained against the leash. It wasn't random. It was urgency, the kind of bark Mark had learned to fear. The shepherd wasn't just alerting. He was tracking something specific. Emily clutched her daughter tighter. What's happening? Mark turned to her, his expression grim. We think whoever planted that device might still be here. Outside, the van's headlights flicked on. The engine roared, and within seconds it sped toward the service exit. Officers outside shouted as tires screeched across the wet tarmac. Go! Mark barked into his radio. All available units intercept that vehicle. Inside, Rex lunged toward the window, barking furiously. The rest of the K9 unit joined him in perfect unison, their collective roars echoing through the terminal, a living alarm system more precise than any machine. Every fiber of their being radiated purpose. Mark's heart pounded. He'd seen Rex react to explosives, narcotics, and fugitives before, but this was different. This was primal, protective. It was as if the dogs knew exactly who was behind that van. Through the glass, Mark saw 2 silhouettes inside the vehicle. One of them turned just long enough for the reflection of his face to glint under the floodlights, cold, expressionless, watching them. Rex's growl deepened, lips curling as if he recognized that face, a scent from the bear, perhaps now matched to the man. Then the van disappeared beyond the gates, tires skidding into the fog. Mark stood motionless, adrenaline flooding his veins. The danger wasn't gone. It was moving. And his gut told him this wasn't over. He glanced at Rex, who still stared at the horizon, unblinking. Whatever those dogs sensed was still out there, waiting. The terminal lights flickered as the command center erupted into movement. Officers shouted updates into radios, the hum of urgency filling every corner. Outside, the black van tore across the runway access road, speeding toward the outer perimeter. Sirens wailed in pursuit. Mark stood at the window, his reflection blending with the flashing lights beyond. Rex stood beside him, muscles rigid, tail low, eyes locked on the distance, every fiber of him alert. Unit 3 is in pursuit. Diaz's voice crackled over the radio. Suspects are heading east, refusing to stop. We've got 2 males, possibly armed. Mark's jaw clenched. They're the ones who planted the tracker, he said under his breath. They were here the whole time. Behind him, the bomb technician spoke up. Sir, you need to see this. Mark turned. The technician pointed to the dissected remains of the stuffed bear, its internal chip displayed on a small tablet screen. We managed to decode part of the transmission. It wasn't just a location signal. It was relaying data packets every few minutes. The coordinates matched classified military zones. Emily gasped, tightening her hold on Lily. Oh God, they were using her to gather data from Daniel's research network. Mark's stomach sank. You mean they were tracking not just you, but military signals through her toy? Yes, the technician confirmed grimly. This was a live surveillance node. Whoever these people are, they were piggybacking off her proximity to secure systems. Before Mark could respond, Rex suddenly barked. One sharp and urgent. The sound made everyone freeze. The shepherd's gaze whipped toward the far corner of the terminal near the baggage storage area. Mark followed his line of sight and noticed something odd. A small maintenance bag left unattended near the glass wall, half hidden behind a bench. EOD, check that bag, he ordered. A technician in a bomb suit approached cautiously, scanner humming. The readings spiked instantly. Sir, this one's hot. Explosives residue confirmed. The air left Mark's lungs. The device wasn't in the bear, but it was here. Evacuate the terminal now, Mark shouted. His team moved like lightning, clearing the remaining civilians as alarms blared again. Rex barked furiously, herding officers away from the danger zone. Through the window, flashing lights converged as the van outside screeched to a stop, tactical units surrounding it. Two men were dragged out, one yelling in another language, the other silent but defiant. Inside, the technician carefully neutralized the small explosive device, confirming seconds later. We're clear. Mark exhaled, heart pounding. Rex stood beside him, chest heaving, eyes steady. The danger had passed, but the truth was far darker. These men hadn't just planned an attack. They had planned a message. And if Rex hadn't sensed it in time, the airport and everyone in it, he would have paid the price. Outside the terminal, chaos unfolded across the tarmac like a scene from a high-stakes thriller. The black van tore down the perimeter road, tires screeching as squad cars closed in from all sides. Helicopter rotors thundered overhead, their searchlights cutting through the early afternoon haze. Inside the lead vehicle, Officer Diaz gripped the radio. Unit 7, target moving eastbound in speeds exceeding 70. Requesting permission for tactical stop. Permission granted, came the reply. And this now Mark, still inside the terminal, watched from the window, his knuckles white around Rex's leash. The German shepherd paced restlessly, barking every time the van swerved. It was as if the dog could feel the chase, his instincts still locked onto the scent of those men. Through the glass, Mark saw one of the suspects lean out of the van window, throwing a small metallic device into the service road. An explosion of sparks burst beneath the police cruiser, forcing it to veer off the path. The van accelerated again, spike strips ready. Diaz's voice roared through the comms. Two police vehicles swerved ahead, deploying the barriers across the asphalt. The van hit them seconds later, its tires bursting with a deafening pop. It spun violently, fishtailing before slamming into the security fence. Officers surrounded it instantly, weapons drawn. Hands where we can see them? Someone shouted. The driver tried to bolt, but a canine unit, one of Mark's dogs named Thor, lunged forward, tackling him to the ground with a controlled bite. The second suspect raised his hands, trembling as armed officers pinned him down. Suspects in custody, Diaz reported breathlessly. Repeat, suspects apprehended. Mark exhaled in relief. He could feel Rex's body relax beside him, though the shepherd's eyes still flicked toward the van's direction. Cautious, vigilant. He gave the dog a reassuring pat. You did good, buddy. You always do. Within minutes, bomb techs and intelligence officers swarmed the crash site. From the wrecked van, they retrieved laptops, false passports, and several encrypted drives. One of the technicians called out, Sir, you'll want to see this. Mark and Diaz stood over the evidence case as it was opened. Inside were surveillance images of Emily, Lily, and Daniel Parker taken from different countries, airports, and dates. Each photo was tagged with coordinates and timestamps. They'd been tracking this family for months, Mark muttered. This wasn't about one airport. It's global. Back inside, Rex pressed his head against Mark's knee, eyes calm now, tail swaying slightly. For a brief moment, the noise faded. Just a man and his dog sharing silent understanding. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, the truth solidified. The threat was neutralized, but the story behind it had just begun to unfold. The chaos outside began to fade. replaced by the quiet hum of relief. The flashing red lights dimmed and the sound of sirens receded into the distance. Inside the terminal, tension melted into silence. Officers lowered their radios, and the crowd, once panicked, now stood frozen, watching a miracle unfold. Emily sat on the floor, her arms wrapped tightly around Lily. The child's tiny hands clutched her mother's uniform sleeve, as if afraid to ever let go again. Her face was stray with tears and exhaustion. But for the first time since the morning began, she managed a small, shaky smile. Rex approached slowly, his movements calm and deliberate. The German shepherd lowered his head, sniffing the air near the girl before pressing his nose gently into her palm. Lily blinked, startled for a moment, then let out a soft giggle, the first sound of pure innocence the airport had heard in hours. She reached up, wrapping her arms around his neck. The entire K9 unit seemed to relax. One by one, the other dogs lowered themselves to the floor, tails swaying lightly. The sight was powerful. 14 trained police dogs, silent and watchful, surrounding a mother and her child, not as enforcers, but as protectors. Emily looked up at Mark, tears glistening in her eyes. You and your dogs, you saved us. Mark shook his head softly. No, ma'am, he did. He nodded toward Rex, who sat proudly but humbly, his eyes still scanning the room as if guarding the girl even now. Rex gave a soft whine and turned back toward Lily, who smiled and whispered, Good boy. She pressed her forehead to her little hand resting on his chest. The shepherd stayed still as if understanding every word. Around them, airport staff and passengers began to applaud. Cameras flashed, but for once, the noise wasn't chaos. It was admiration. People clapped for the dogs, for the officers, for the mother and daughter reunited against all odds. Mark stood quietly, letting the scene wash over him. He knew the world would call this a miracle, but he also knew better. It wasn't luck. It was instinct, dedication, the unspoken bond between handler and dog that had once again defied the impossible. As Lily buried her face in Rex's fur, Emily looked at Mark through grateful tears. He didn't just save us, she said softly. He gave us back our life. And in that single moment, every officer in the room felt it. This was more than a rescue. It was redemption. By the time the last cruiser left the runway, a heavy stillness settled over the airport. The chaos, the sirens, the shouting, all of it had faded into the background hum of distant engines and soft murmurs. Mark stood by the window overlooking the tarmac, his reflection framed by the pale glow of dawn breaking through the clouds. Rex sat at his feet, silent now, his head resting on his paws. For the first time in hours, Mark let himself breathe. The adrenaline that had carried him through every second of danger began to ebb, replaced by the quiet ache of realization. He turned and looked across the terminal at his officers, exhausted but alive, at the crowd slowly returning to normal, and at the small child sitting safely in her mother's arms. Rex lifted his head, his brown eyes meeting Mark's. There was no bark, no movement. Just that knowing look only a canine handler could understand. Mark smiled faintly. You knew before any of us, didn't you? He whispered. The shepherd's tail thumped once against the floor. It hit Mark then, everything that could have gone wrong. If Rex hadn't sensed the device, if the dogs hadn't surrounded that girl, if they'd hesitated even for a moment, there wouldn't be an airport left to stand in. These dogs hadn't just followed training. They'd acted out of instinct, out of something deeper. He glanced toward Emily and Lily again. The mother was holding her daughter close, murmuring softly as paramedics checked her vitals. The little girl waved at Rex, and the shepherd's ears perked up, tail wagging gently in return. Mark's throat tightened. They don't just save lives, he murmured to Diaz, who had stepped up beside him. Sometimes they save what's left of our faith in this world. Diaz nodded quietly. These dogs see things we never will. Mark placed a hand on Rex's back, feeling the steady heartbeat beneath his palm. Yeah, he said softly. And thank God for that. Outside, the sky brightened. The first flight of the morning lifting into the air. For most passengers, the day was beginning. For Mark and his team, it felt like something else entirely. A reminder that heroes don't always wear badges. Sometimes they walk on four legs. By the next morning, the airport was buzzing again, but this time for a very different reason. What had started as panic had turned into one of the most talked about events in the world. Dozens of passengers had captured the moment on their phones. The 14 police dogs forming a circle around the little girl, shielding her as chaos erupted. Within hours, the footage spread across every major news network and social media feed on the planet. Headlines flooded in: 14 heroes with tails. Dogs sense danger before humans do. The airport miracle. Millions of people replayed the video in disbelief. They watched the 10 seconds unfold, then gasped as the truth was revealed that the dogs hadn't attacked but protected a child from a hidden threat. At the precinct, Mark scrolled through the footage silently, the glow from the screen reflecting off his tired eyes. Around him, his fellow officers laughed, cried, and shook their heads in awe. Even hardened veterans admitted they'd never seen anything like it. You realize, Diaz said, half smiling, your whole unit's famous now. They've been trending for 12 hours straight. Mark chuckled softly. Yeah, but they don't care about fame. He glanced down at Rex, who lay at his feet, gnawing on a chew toy as if the world hadn't just hailed him a hero. He only cares that the girl's safe. Emily sent a message later that afternoon. A short video of Lily sitting up in her hospital bed, smiling shyly at the camera. She keeps asking about her dogs, Emily said in the clip, especially the one who looked at her like he already knew her heart. Mark watched it twice, then forwarded it to the rest of his team. No words, just the image of the little girl's grin. By nightfall, news crews camped outside the K9 facility and offers poured in for interviews, documentaries, and public tributes. But Mark turned them all down. Let the story speak for itself, he said simply. He knew the truth didn't need embellishment. The world had seen courage, pure, instinctive, selfless. And as millions replayed that video again and again, one thing became clear. These dogs hadn't just stopped the disaster. They'd restored humanity's faith in heroes. 2 weeks later, the world was still talking about the airport miracle. The footage of Rex and the other police dogs had been viewed over 100 million times. News anchors called them guardians with instincts beyond science. Children across the country drew pictures of German shepherds wearing police badges, while strangers sent flowers, letters, and treats to the K9 unit. But for Mark Jensen, none of that compared to what came next. That morning, he and Rex were invited to the hospital to meet Lily and her mother. The halls were quiet, filled with the soft beeping of monitors and the smell of antiseptic. As they entered the room, Lily's face lit up instantly. Rex, she squealed, sitting up in bed. Her tiny arms opened wide. Rex's tail wagged furiously. He patted forward and gently placed his head on the bed beside her hand. Lily giggled, running her fingers through his fur. Mommy, look, he remembered me. Emily smiled, tears forming in her eyes. Of course he did, sweetheart. Heroes never forget the ones they save. Mark stood at the doorway, his chest tightening. He'd seen bravery in combat zones and disasters and countless rescues, but this was different. This was the quiet kind of heroism that didn't need medals or speeches. Emily turned toward him. Officer Jensen, she said softly. I never got to thank you properly. He shook his head. You don't have to. Just knowing you both made it, that's thanks enough. She smiled through her tears. Still, I think you should know. The doctor said if you hadn't found us when you did, if your dog hadn't reacted that fast, Lily and I wouldn't have survived that day. He didn't just save us. He gave us a second chance. Rex looked up as if understanding, his deep brown eyes glistening under the hospital light. Emily handed Mark a small folded note. Lily wanted to write something for him. Mark unfolded it slowly. In a child's uneven handwriting, it read, Tell the dog he's my angel. For a moment, Mark couldn't speak. His throat tightened as he looked down at Rex, who now sat quietly beside the bed, eyes soft, calm, and proud. Outside the window, sunlight streamed through the clouds, casting a warm glow across the room. Mark smiled faintly. Come on, partner, he whispered. Another mission complete. And as they left the hospital that day, the world didn't just see a hero in uniform. It saw proof that sometimes the greatest hearts walk on four legs.